There are moments in life that break your heart quietly, not with screams, not with tears, but with silence. For me, it was 4 empty chairs. 4 chairs sitting in the front row of my wedding, each one carrying the name of someone I loved more than myself. My father, my mother, my younger sister Brooke, and my best friend of 19 years. The people I had spent my entire life showing up for weren't there when it was finally my turn. Instead, they were 40 minutes away, laughing, taking pictures, raising champagne glasses, at my sister's engagement party, a party my own mother had scheduled, on the exact same afternoon as my wedding. I wish I could tell you that was the moment my heart broke, but the truth is, it had been breaking for years. I just didn't know it yet, because while everyone believed they had abandoned me that day, they had forgotten one tiny detail. 3 years earlier, I had signed one legal document, a document quietly sitting inside a county courthouse, a document nobody remembered until the exact moment they tried giving away something that no longer legally belonged to them. And by the time my wedding cake was cut, my phone showed 36 missed calls. Not because they suddenly loved me, because their perfect celebration had just collapsed. My name is Claire Hadley. I'm 34 years old. I'm a hospice nurse. Every day, I sit beside people during the last chapters of their lives. You learn strange things in hospice. People rarely regret the money they didn't make. They rarely regret the promotions they missed. Almost every regret has a person's name attached to it. Someone they never forgave, someone they ignored, someone they assumed would always be there. I've watched children arrive 5 minutes too late to say goodbye. I've watched husbands whisper apologies to wives who could no longer hear them. And after years of witnessing those final moments, I thought I understood family. I was wrong. Because the hardest family I ever had to understand was my own. In our family, I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the celebrated daughter. I wasn't even the interesting one. I was simply the dependable one. Whenever the water heater exploded at midnight, they called Claire. When Dad forgot his medication, Claire fixed it. Property taxes overdue, Claire handled them. Hospital paperwork, Claire. Insurance problems, Claire. Broken tractor, Claire. I became the emergency contact for everyone else's life. Meanwhile, my younger sister Brooke lived in an entirely different world. Birthdays became events. Every promotion deserved a dinner. Every relationship deserved balloons. Every tiny achievement became family news. Nobody hated me. That would have almost been easier. Instead, I was invisible. Useful but invisible. Like electricity. People don't celebrate electricity. They only notice when it's gone. And somehow, I convinced myself that was enough. Because if being needed wasn't love, it looked close enough. Looking back now, I realize I confused responsibility with belonging. And that mistake nearly cost me everything. When Daniel proposed, I cried for almost an hour. Not because of the ring, not because of the proposal, because someone had finally chosen me first. Daniel wasn't dramatic, he wasn't loud. He simply had this quiet way of making me feel seen, something I'd spent my entire childhood searching for. When we started planning our wedding, he asked me one question that I still remember. Why is your guest list so small? I laughed, made some joke about saving money, but he didn't laugh. He knew me too well. You don't expect them to come, do you? That question sat between us for several seconds. Finally, I answered honestly. If they want to come, they will. At the time, I believed those words. Now, I understand they were less hope and more a final test. A week before the wedding, I drove to my parents' farmhouse myself. Not because I had to. I'd already mailed the invitation weeks earlier, but something inside me needed to hand it to them personally. Almost as if some small, frightened part of me needed proof that they remembered. The farm had been in our family for generations. A gravel road stretched across the fields my grandfather had cleared with his own hands decades earlier. Every tree held a childhood memory. Every fence carried another story. It had always felt like home, until I stepped onto the porch. My mother, Carol, sat there flipping through a thick wedding planner binder. Only, it wasn't mine. It was Brooke's engagement planner. She barely looked up. Oh, Claire, you're here. No hug, no excitement, no questions about my wedding. Nothing. I handed her my invitation. She placed it on top of the binder, without opening it. Then immediately started talking about Brooke. You won't believe Tyler's family. They want a proper engagement celebration. Carol, his mother, says Brooke deserves something beautiful. She smiled while saying it. The kind of smile mothers save for daughters they're proud of. I stood there holding my own hands, waiting for her to ask about my dress, my flowers, anything. Instead, she kept talking, as if my wedding didn't even exist. Across the porch, my father sat silently beneath a blanket. 3 years earlier, he had suffered a devastating stroke. It weakened the right side of his body, but it also stole something else. He stopped looking people in the eye, especially me. Hi, Dad. He nodded quietly, nothing more. Then I asked the simplest question imaginable. Mom, did you write our wedding date down? She waved her hand casually. Oh, of course. but she never opened the planner, never reached for a pen, never wrote it anywhere. Most people would have ignored that moment. I couldn't, because my mother wrote everything down. Birthdays, appointments, church meetings, Brooke's manicure appointments, everything, except my wedding. I smiled, pretended not to notice. But while driving home, I kept repeating one sentence to myself. A mother doesn't forget her daughter's wedding. Then I laughed, because deep inside, I already knew mine could, and maybe already had. At the time, I thought the wedding would reveal the truth about my family. I was wrong. The truth had already happened 3 years earlier. The only difference was, I hadn't understood its importance. Not yet. 3 years before my wedding, my father suffered his stroke. While doctors fought to save his life, another disaster arrived. A foreclosure notice the family farm, the land my grandfather had spent his entire life building, was 90 days away from being taken by the bank. The amount needed to save it? $95,000. My parents had hidden the problem for years. They never told me, not until everything was already collapsing. I was 31, working endless double shifts, living inside hospital hallways, saving every paycheck for one dream, buying my first home. My savings account held, almost exactly, $84,000. Every penny represented missed vacations, night shifts, Christmases spent working, birthdays skipped, and years of exhaustion. I sat alone inside the hospital parking garage, staring at that foreclosure notice. Then I opened my banking app. Less than 5 minutes later, I made the biggest decision of my life. I transferred everything, every single dollar, because I couldn't let my grandfather's farm disappear. I couldn't let my father wake up and discover everything he'd built was gone. But even while crying inside that parking garage, something inside me whispered a warning. Protect yourself! Not because I wanted revenge, because I knew my family. Love was remembered, sacrifice wasn't, and that quiet instinct would one day become the only reason I wasn't erased completely. I had no idea then that one signature, one legal document, would eventually expose everything my family had spent decades pretending wasn't true. And the first crack was about to appear. I wish I could tell you that everything after saving the farm became easier. It didn't. In fact, that's when I unknowingly became my family's safety net. Every crisis, every emergency, every financial problem somehow found its way to me. And every single time, I showed up. Not because anyone thanked me, because I genuinely believed that's what family does. What I didn't realize was that my family had slowly stopped seeing me as a daughter. I had become a solution, a person you called when life broke. Nothing more. A few weeks after Dad came home from rehabilitation, life slowly returned to normal. At least, that's what everyone else believed. Dad struggled to walk. Mom pretended everything was fine. Brooke continued living exactly as she always had. And me? I went back to working 12-hour shifts, trying to rebuild a savings account that no longer existed. Not once did anyone ask what I had sacrificed. Not once did anyone say, Claire, because of you, we still have a home. Instead, my mother told relatives, we managed to save the farm. We. One tiny word, 4 letters. It erased everything I'd done. I smiled anyway, because correcting people felt selfish. Or at least, that's what I'd been taught. Months turned into years. The foreclosure disappeared. Life moved forward. The paperwork sat quietly inside a county office, collecting dust. Almost forgotten. Almost. Then, Brooke met Tyler. The entire family acted as if royalty had arrived. Tyler was kind, successful, from a respected family. My mother adored him almost immediately. Every Sunday dinner became, what did Tyler say? What does Tyler think? When are they getting engaged? Meanwhile, Daniel and I had already been together for years. Nobody asked about us. Nobody cared. I noticed. I just stopped expecting anything different. One afternoon, my phone rang while I was finishing paperwork at the hospice center. It was Mom. She almost never called me during work. For one brief second, I thought Dad was back in the hospital. I rushed into the supply room and answered. Mom? Instead of panic, I heard laughter. Claire, Brooke's engaged? I smiled. Genuinely, I'm so happy for her. And I meant it. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. I'd carried her when she was a baby, protected her from bullies, helped her study, bought birthday presents I couldn't afford. I loved Brooke. Then Mom continued talking. We're thinking about throwing a huge engagement celebration. I congratulated her again. Then came the sentence that stayed with me for months. You understand, Claire? A wedding is just one day. But family, that's who you really show up for. For a second, I honestly didn't understand what she meant. Then it hit me. She wasn't talking about Brooke. She was talking about me. She was ranking us. Brooke was family. My wedding was just a party. Those words settled somewhere deep inside me, someplace they would never leave. That same week, I called my best friend Steph. We'd known each other since 10th grade, 19 years. She knew every version of me, the awkward teenager, the exhausted nursing student, the woman rebuilding her life after endless night shifts. She'd already agreed to be my maid of honor months earlier, so I called about final dress fittings. Instead of excitement, I heard hesitation. It lasted only 2 seconds. But after 19 years, you learn someone's silence better than their voice. Claire, I might have a conflict that weekend. I laughed. What conflict? She stumbled through the explanation. Family obligations. Someone else's event. Maybe she couldn't make it. Nothing made sense. Finally, I asked quietly, Steph, whose event? Silence. Longer this time. Then she whispered, Brooke invited me. The room suddenly felt smaller. My mother called too. Everything inside me froze. My own mother had personally contacted my maid of honor, not to support my wedding, to recruit her for Brooke's engagement party. I couldn't even find words. It's the same day as my wedding, Steph. Another silence. This one said everything. She either hadn't known, or she'd chosen not to ask. Neither answer hurt less. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't realize. I wanted to believe her. Maybe part of me still does. But intentions don't empty wedding chairs. Choices do. When we hung up, I didn't cry. I simply sat in my car outside the bridal shop, looking through the windshield, trying to count who would actually be there when I walked down the aisle. Every number felt smaller than the last. A few days later, the final confirmation arrived. Ironically, not from my family, from my cousin Marie. She texted me a picture, no message, just an elegant cream-colored invitation. Please join us to celebrate Brooke and Tyler's engagement. I smiled at first. Then I looked closer. Date, Saturday. Time, 1 hour before my ceremony. Location, 40 minutes away. Exactly long enough that nobody could attend both. I stared at the invitation for almost a full minute. Surely, this had to be a mistake. I immediately called Mom. She answered cheerfully. Hi, sweetheart. I skipped the small talk. Mom, Brooke's engagement party is scheduled on my wedding day. A pause. Then, oh, is it? That answer hurt more than if she'd admitted it. Because it wasn't confusion. It was performance. I took a slow breath. There are 52 weekends in a year. She sighed dramatically. Tyler's family is only available that weekend. We had no choice. No choice. Interesting phrase. There are always choices. Some simply reveal what matters most. Then came the sentence. That finally changed something inside me. We can't split the family. People will have to choose. As though I were the unreasonable one. As though my wedding had inconvenienced everyone else's schedule. As though she hadn't built the conflict herself. For years, I would have argued. I would have begged. I would have explained why it hurt. This time, I didn't. Because arguing only works when someone still cares about your answer. Instead, I smiled. I hope it's a beautiful party, Mom. She sounded relieved immediately. Oh, Claire, thank you for being so mature. Mature. That's the word families often use when they're thanking someone for accepting unfair treatment quietly. I ended the call. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because if I didn't laugh, I knew I was finally going to cry. That evening, Daniel found me sitting at our dining table. Wedding seating charts spread everywhere. Little paper name cards. Half-finished guest list. 4 empty spaces. He sat beside me without speaking. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He never rushed silence. Eventually, he asked softly, we could move the wedding. I looked at him for a brief moment. I imagined it. Changing everything. Making everyone comfortable. Making sure nobody had to choose. Making myself smaller one more time. Then I realized something. I'd been making myself smaller my entire life. No, I finally answered. If they want to come, they'll come. And if they don't, then that's my answer. Daniel reached across the table, covering my hand with his. Then we'll get married anyway. And it'll still be the best day of our lives. I smiled. Not because I suddenly believed him. Because I wanted to. Together, we removed 4 name cards from the seating chart. Mom, Dad, Brooke, Steph. We stared at the empty spaces. Then, I quietly slid every card back exactly where it belonged. Daniel looked confused. Why leave them? I looked at those 4 chairs, already imagining them standing empty. Because sometimes, I whispered, silence tells the truth better than people do. I had no idea. Those 4 empty chairs were about to become the most unforgettable image of my entire life. And while my family prepared for Brooke's perfect engagement celebration, an old cardboard box sitting untouched in my apartment was about to reveal one forgotten document that would destroy everything they thought they owned. The night before my wedding, sleep never came. Not because I was nervous about marrying Daniel. There wasn't a single doubt in my heart about him. The doubt was about everyone else. Would my parents really choose another celebration over their own daughter's wedding? Would Brooke actually smile for engagement photos while I walked down the aisle without my family? Or would they surprise me? For one foolish moment, I still hoped. Hope has a strange habit. It survives long after logic dies. Around midnight, I wandered into the spare bedroom of our apartment. There were still unopened moving boxes stacked against the wall. Boxes I'd carried from apartment to apartment for years, without ever unpacking. One of them caught my eye, a faded cardboard banker box. Across the top, written in black marker, were two simple words: farm, important. I hadn't opened it in 3 years, because everything inside reminded me of the hardest spring of my life. I carried it to the floor, pulled off the lid. Inside, old folders, bank statements, legal papers, receipts, hospital documents, every painful memory, preserved in paper. Near the bottom, rested a worn manila envelope. Its corners were bent with age. When I opened it, 3 documents slid into my lap: the promissory note, the recorded line, and beneath them, something I had completely forgotten existed: a handwritten letter, my grandfather's handwriting. I froze. He had written it just 1 year before he passed away. Hands trembling, I unfolded it. The first sentence stole the air from my lungs. If you're reading this someday, it means this land has become more than dirt. I couldn't continue. Not yet. My vision blurred. I folded the letter carefully, placed everything back inside the envelope, and held it against my chest. For reasons I couldn't explain, I suddenly felt safe, almost as if Grandpa had reached across time to remind me that truth never disappears. People forget. Paper doesn't. I had no idea that by tomorrow afternoon, those same documents would become the center of a family disaster. Saturday morning arrived, wrapped in golden autumn sunlight. It was the kind of weather photographers dream about. Cool air, blue skies, leaves drifting gently across vineyard paths. The restored barn where Daniel and I were getting married looked almost unreal. White flowers lined the aisle. Soft music floated through the wooden beams. Friends laughed. Children ran across the grass. Everything was beautiful. Everything except 4 chairs. Front row, left side. Each chair carried a small white card. Mom, Dad, Brooke, Steph, empty. Every single one. People tried not to stare, but everyone noticed. I noticed. As I waited outside with my father-in-law, I caught myself looking toward the parking lot. Every passing car made my heart jump. Maybe this one, maybe now, maybe they changed their minds. But the parking lot stayed exactly the same. Daniel found me just before the ceremony. He didn't ask if they were coming. He already knew. Instead, he quietly took both my hands.
You ready?
I looked toward those empty chairs one last time, then back at him. Now I am. The music began. The barn doors opened. I stepped forward. Every guest turned to watch. The aisle seemed longer than ever before. Halfway down, I couldn't stop myself. I looked. 4 empty chairs. Waiting. Silent. Almost accusing. For one terrifying second, my throat closed. I thought I might cry before reaching Daniel. Then, he smiled. One smile. That's all it took. The empty chairs disappeared. Not physically, emotionally. Because at the end of that aisle stood the one person who had chosen me. Completely. Without conditions. Without comparisons. Without making me compete for love. I reached him. He whispered, "You look beautiful." And suddenly everything else stopped mattering. Our vows weren't perfect. They were real. We laughed. We cried. At one point, Daniel forgot part of what he'd written. We laughed even harder. The nurses from the hospice filled 2 entire rows. Co-workers who had traded shifts just to be there. My favorite aunt had driven 3 hours. College friends hugged me. People who chose to celebrate us. That's the strange thing about empty chairs. They don't just show you who's missing. They remind you who stayed. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. As sunset painted the vineyard gold, we gathered around the wedding cake. Simple, elegant. 2 tears, lemon and elderflower. Daniel placed his hand over mine. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1. Just as the knife touched the cake, my phone vibrated. Once. Then again. Then again. I glanced down. A text message. "We need to talk. Right now." Seconds later, the phone began ringing. "Mom, decline. Brooke, decline. Home phone, decline. Mom again, decline." The calls kept coming, one after another, without stopping. The phone vibrated so hard, I smiled, turned the phone over, switched it to silent, and together, we cut the cake. Because for one single day, I refused to let someone else's emergency become mine. We kissed. Everyone cheered. Music started again. And somewhere, 40 minutes away, my family's was quietly falling apart. By the time dinner ended, my phone displayed 36 missed calls. 36. Not 1, not 5. 36. The old Claire would have panicked. She would have rushed into the parking lot, driven 40 minutes. Solved whatever disaster had happened. Because that's who I'd always been. The fixer. The dependable daughter. The emergency contact. But something had changed. I looked at those missed calls, and for the first time in my life, I asked myself a question. What if this isn't my emergency? It was such a simple thought, yet it felt revolutionary. I slid the phone into my purse, returned to the dance floor, and danced with my husband. The world didn't end. The farm didn't burn down. Nobody died. Life continued, without me rescuing it. That realization alone felt like freedom. Near midnight, we finally arrived at our hotel, still wearing pieces of our wedding clothes, still laughing about terrible dance moves, still completely unaware of what had happened at the engagement party. I removed my shoes, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at my phone again. 36 missed calls, 12 voicemails, more than 20 text messages. Daniel sat beside me quietly. You don't have to listen tonight. I know, I answered softly, but I think I'm ready. I pressed play. The first voicemail was from Mom. Her voice sounded cheerful, artificially cheerful. Claire, call me back when you can. It's important. The second, slightly less cheerful. Honey, where are you? Please call me. The third, the panic had arrived. Claire, answer your phone. Right now. The fourth, she was crying. By the sixth voicemail, her voice barely sounded like my mother anymore. You don't understand what's happening. Please, just call me then, Brooke. Sobbing, angry, humiliated. I don't know what you did, but you ruined everything. Are you happy now? I slowly lowered the phone. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at me carefully. What happened? I stared toward the hotel window, then quietly whispered, I think they finally remembered what? The paperwork. Daniel frowned. What paperwork? I closed my eyes, remembering the envelope, the promissory note, the recorded lien, my grandfather's letter. They tried giving away the farm today. I think they forgot that legally they couldn't. At that exact moment, everything suddenly made sense. 36 missed calls. The panic, the accusations, the desperation. It wasn't about my wedding. It never had been. It was about one forgotten signature, made 3 years earlier, that had just destroyed the biggest lie my family had ever told. And by Monday morning, I would finally open that envelope again and discover that the truth had been waiting for me all along. Monday morning, for the first time since my wedding, I opened the envelope completely. I spread every document across my kitchen table. Daniel sat quietly beside me. Neither of us spoke. Some papers don't need explanation. They speak for themselves. The first document was the promissory note. 3 years earlier, I had loaned my parents $95,000 to save the family farm. Every dollar was documented. Every signature was there. My mother's, my father's, mine. The second document was even more important. The recorded lien, filed officially with the county courthouse. One simple legal fact changed everything. The farm could not be sold, transferred, or gifted to anyone until my loan was satisfied. It didn't matter who my parents wanted to give it to. It didn't matter what speeches they made. It didn't matter how many guests applauded. The law doesn't recognize favoritism. It recognizes paperwork. Then, I unfolded Grandpa's letter. This time, I read every word. Near the end, one sentence stopped me cold. Land doesn't belong to the child who is loved the most. It belongs to the one who keeps it alive. He had underlined one phrase, keeps it alive. For the first time in years, I cried. Not because of the money, not because of the farm, because someone finally saw me, even after he was gone. Later that morning, I visited Walter Bell, the loan officer who had handled the original paperwork. He pulled my file from the cabinet, adjusted his glasses, then quietly said something I never expected. Your mother called me Saturday. So did Tyler's father. My stomach tightened. What did you tell them? He smiled gently. The truth. The lien is valid. The debt is valid. And until it's released, the property cannot legally transfer. He leaned back. I didn't take your side. I didn't take theirs. I simply read the file. Sometimes, facts don't need defending. Tuesday morning, Mom finally stopped leaving voicemails. She called directly. Her voice had changed. No anger, no panic, just softness. The voice she used whenever she wanted something. Claire, I think this has all been a misunderstanding. I stayed quiet. When you helped us, that was a gift. You never intended to hold it over the She paused. So, just sign the release. Let Brooke have the farm. Don't let bitterness ruin this family. Bitterness. Interesting word. People often call boundaries bitterness when those boundaries inconvenience them. I answered calmly. I'm not bitter. I'm simply asking you to remember. You asked me to save the farm. I did. You signed the paperwork. You forgot. The courthouse didn't. Silence. Then her voice hardened. So this is about money? No, I answered. It's about respect. And those aren't the same thing. I ended the call the next evening. Brooke showed up at my apartment. For the first time, ever. She actually rang the wrong buzzer. She didn't even know which apartment was mine. That detail hurt more than I expected. She walked inside looking exhausted. Not angry. Scared. Tyler's parents think we lied, she whispered. They keep asking about the line. Then she looked directly at me. Why would you do this? I looked at my little sister. Really looked. For the first time, she wasn't the favorite child. She was simply another person who had never been told the truth. Quietly, I explained everything. Dad's stroke, the foreclosure, my savings, the $95,000, the paperwork, the lien, every single detail. She never interrupted. She just stared. Finally, she whispered one sentence. You never told me. I smiled sadly. No, I didn't. Because I spent my whole life believing love didn't need witnesses. That sacrifice spoke for itself. I was wrong. Thursday, Dad called. Not Mom, Dad. His speech was still slower after the stroke. Every word took effort. Claire, I remembered. I closed my eyes. I know. I signed those papers. I never forgot. I just never stopped your mother. There was a long silence. Then, the strongest man I'd ever known said something I'll never forget. I've been ashamed. Every time I looked at you, I remembered you saved us. And I couldn't forgive myself for needing my daughter. Tears filled my eyes. Finally, he apologized. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. Then he asked, please, sign the release. I smiled through tears. Dad, I love you, but I'm not giving away the house I already paid to save. If we're going to fix this, we fix it honestly. He didn't argue. He simply whispered, I understand. That was enough. Sunday afternoon, Mom organized a family meeting. Everyone came. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Brooke, Tyler, even Tyler's parents. It wasn't a meeting. It was a performance. She wanted an audience. She wanted everyone watching, while she painted me as the villain, the selfish daughter, the bitter sister. She began speaking before I even sat down. Claire secretly placed a legal claim on our family home. Now she's refusing to release it. We raised her better than this. Heads turned toward me. The room felt heavy. For one brief second, I almost became that little girl again, the one who apologized, just to keep the peace. Then, I remembered something. Little girls apologize. Women tell the truth. I walked to the coffee table, placed my envelope down, opened it. Slowly, one document at a time. 3 years ago, the bank was preparing to take this farm. Dad was in the hospital. Mom, you asked me for help. I emptied my savings. Every dollar. 95,000. I placed the promissory note on the table. You both signed this. Then, the recorded lien. This protected the farm. It also protected me. Finally, I looked around the room. I'm not taking this house. I never wanted this house. I'm simply the reason it still exists. Silence. Complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody argued. Nobody could. Because paper doesn't have emotions, only facts. Then, my mother exploded. How dare you humiliate this family? We sacrificed everything for you. You've destroyed Brooke's future, she shouted until her voice broke. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. Brooke's engagement party is scheduled on my wedding day. A pause. Then, oh, is it? That answer hurt more than if she'd admitted it. Because it wasn't confusion. It was performance. I took a slow breath. There are 52 weekends in a year, she sighed dramatically. Tyler's family is only available that weekend. We had no choice. No choice. Interesting phrase. There are always choices. Some simply reveal what matters most. Then came the sentence that finally changed something inside me. We can't split the family. People will have to choose. As though I were the unreasonable one. As though my wedding had inconvenienced everyone else's schedule. As though she hadn't built the conflict herself. For years, I would have argued. I would have begged. I would have explained why it hurt. This time, I didn't. Because arguing only works when someone still cares about your answer. Instead, I smiled. I hope it's a beautiful party, Mom. She sounded relieved immediately. Oh, Claire, thank you for being so mature. Mature. That's the word families often use when they're thanking someone for accepting unfair treatment quietly. I ended the call. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because if I didn't laugh, I knew I was finally going to cry. That evening, Daniel found me sitting at our dining table. Wedding seating charts spread everywhere. Little paper name cards. Half-finished guest list. 4 empty spaces. He sat beside me without speaking. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He never rushed silence. Eventually, he asked softly, we could move the wedding. I looked at him for a brief moment. I imagined it. Changing everything. Making everyone comfortable. Making sure nobody had to choose. Making myself smaller one more time. Then I realized something. I'd been making myself smaller my entire life. No, I finally answered. If they want to come. Brooke's engagement party is scheduled on my wedding day. A pause. Then, oh, is it? That answer hurt more than if she'd admitted it. Because it wasn't confusion. It was performance. I took a slow breath. There are 52 weekends in a year, she sighed dramatically. Tyler's family is only available that weekend. We had no choice. No choice. Interesting phrase. There are always choices. Some simply reveal what matters most. Then came the sentence that finally changed something inside me. We can't split the family. People will have to choose. As though I were the unreasonable one. As though my wedding had inconvenienced everyone else's schedule. As though she hadn't built the conflict herself. For years, I would have argued. I would have begged. I would have explained why it hurt. This time, I didn't. Because arguing only works when someone still cares about your answer. Instead, I smiled. I hope it's a beautiful party, Mom. She sounded relieved immediately. Oh, Claire, thank you for being so mature. Mature. That's the word families often use when they're thanking someone for accepting unfair treatment quietly. I ended the call. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because if I didn't laugh, I knew I was finally going to cry. That evening, Daniel found me sitting at our dining table. Wedding seating charts spread everywhere. Little paper name cards. Half-finished guest list. 4 empty spaces. He sat beside me without speaking. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He never rushed silence. Eventually, he asked softly, "We could move the wedding." I looked at him for a brief moment. I imagined it. Changing everything. Making everyone comfortable. Making sure nobody had to choose. Making myself smaller, one more time. Then I realized something. I'd been making myself smaller my entire life. No, I finally answered. If they want to come.